approaching Littlehampton, our final destination. Thank you for travelling with Southern.
Well, this is a surprise. My first walk of the year is outside of London. Because it's such a nice, beautiful, sunny day, I thought I would head for the coast at Littlehampton, even though it's 1 degrees. We're gonna go for a walk anyways though. Littlehampton station was rebuilt during the Network South East era, hence why this sign here still has its logo on, though unfortunately slightly covered up. What isn't covered up is a red star logo, which is used to represent an express parcel service, which was used until the 90s. It's a very rare example of that. I've only ever seen one of them at Guildford before. We're welcomed almost immediately to Littlehampton with a nice clock tower in the town centre here. So I've managed to find the River Arun, which if I'm to follow for a short period it would bring me down to the beach. Sun is right in my eyes though, and I actually remember that being a problem last time I did this walk. So yes, I have been to Littlehampton once before. In the summer of 2019 I decided to travel on the 2 little coastal branch lines to Littlehampton and Bognor Regis that spur off of a much longer railway that goes all the way along the south coast of England. In fact, I might even return here one day, cross over the River Arun and walk the coast to Bognor, as it's not too far away. But for today, I'm going to head in the other direction, heading east, so the sun will be behind me for pretty much the entire day, which is good, towards Worthing. So, off we go. Oh, I remember this very well. The swirling bench design, that makes me think it's probably the longest bench in the world because it just continues all the way up the coast. Because I sat on this letting my feet dry after I went in the sea. I remember it being a very windy day, so there were some huge waves. So although I placed my shoes quite far up on the stones, they almost got washed out to sea. Luckily it's not a windy day today, otherwise it would be very cold doing this walk. But I will probably spoil it now and say that I don't think I'll be going in the sea today. Well, I've already walked further up the coast than the last time I came to Littlehampton, as I've come across a miniature railway at a Norfolk Road station, which isn't running because, you know, I am off season. Now, this is somewhat a follow-up walk to one I did last year in Brighton during the winter, because it's urban enough that mud won't be a problem, and it's close enough to London that the daylight hours won't be a problem either. It's also just a completely different experience for me to visit the coast in the winter, which I quite like. Though I have done a couple of walks on this channel of coast walks in the summer along the beach in Bournemouth, where it is very sandy. And what I like to do there is to walk barefooted in the water pretty much the entirety of the walk, which is not something that I'd really be able to do here. Obviously it'd be too cold to do it now, but also it would just hurt because it's stony. Well, that's a beautiful looking building. Rustington Convalescent Home, the gate says. We are leaving Littlehampton now. The sun's actually quite nice and warm, which is a surprise. Beach is starting to become a little bit more quiet and empty now, as there's no longer a road right alongside the coast. And I think I might take my first little break. And even, I'm so surprised with how warm the sun is, even though it's literally like 2 degrees. I'm going to take my jacket and scarf off. I am just carrying my jacket in my arms now as I walk along. I'm loving all the different coloured beach huts along this stretch. This is really nice. Oh, there's no path at all now. It's just the beach. Alright then. Oh no, there is a path. But I guess if given the opportunity I'd rather be closer to the water. even if that does mean I'm taking the more trickier path because I have to walk across all of the stones. So I'm heading on through Angmering, where someone's done some rather nice decorations on the beach here, and there's also just like the most incredible houses along here too. Some have so much glass though that I almost wouldn't want to live in one like that. I mean, you can pull your blinds, but you can very clearly see in some of these properties. I don't think I'd want that. I might actually head up onto the green grass for this bit. I feel like my legs are going to feel very jelly-like after walking on stones the entire time, moving onto a flat surface. Wow, it's actually considerably more peaceful because I'm further away from the waves and I don't have the loud crunching of stones beneath my feet. Look how there's still frost on the grass, by the way, even though it's like coming up to mid-afternoon now. So I've moved from Angmering into Ferring. I've come across a little river that's nowhere near as substantial as the River Arun back at Littlehampton. It's actually quite frozen, still quite cold I guess, not that I'm feeling it. And it's just about to reach the sea. I want to see just how strong this ice actually is. Obviously I'm not going to go right into the middle, that would be dangerous. Oh, okay, no, it is quite light. Well, I don't really need to do that I guess, because it does look quite light, doesn't it? Ah, there's some horses here by the river too. I'm wondering whether that pole out there is where the Ferring-Rife River is meeting the sea, because it does seem to line up quite nicely with the green fence where it's heading underground. Well, it's a new year and yet I'm still coming across pillboxes. How fitting for the first walk of the year. Built in 1940 as part of a network of defences built all over the British Isles. We've seen our fair share of them, especially last year. One of the few remaining examples. As I said, we've seen a lot. Maybe this specific type is different. Oh yeah, to be fair, the ones we usually see just have a very small hole that soldiers would point their gun through, not a rather large access area like that. Great view though, overlooking the sea. There's an ever so slight kink in the coastline here as I approach Shoreham-by-Sea that I think I'm getting my first look at where the walk will end at Worthing, all the way down there. Taking another break on the beach. I might actually put my jacket on when I start walking again, because it does get cold when you sit down. Plus it's also just annoying to carry. At the beginning I did mention how there's a railway line which pretty much just goes all the way along the south coast, and there is actually a Shoreham-by-Sea station on that line, which means at some point I'm gonna have to come back here to tick that station off. So I feel like that day it would be pretty rude if I didn't at least come down and end the walk somewhere along here on the beach where I'm now sitting at. Hopefully that day, if it's a nice sunny day, it'll be a beautiful sunset too. I'm kind of manifesting and foreshadowing that we might get one later as well. Okay, this bit's great because it's not as stony and there's no groins that I have to constantly be weaving in and out of or climbing over. And with how wide the beach is at this stage, it's giving me vibes of Amsterdam's beach. Just, it's not as beautifully and extremely foggy as it was. Quite the opposite actually. Well, I can definitely see my destination now, Worthing Pier. The groins have returned, by the way. But luckily, most of them seem to barely exist, so, you know, it's barely an inconvenience. Well, the tide has gone out now, so I can actually avoid the groins entirely by walking down by the water. And I am pretty much here at Worthing Pier, and it looks like we are going to get a beautiful sunset. I wonder whether this here was an old pier. It looks like it could have been, right? But it could just be any kind of fancy building along the coast. So this is where I'm going to end the walk today, but I would like to come back at some point and continue further along the coast towards Brighton. So I should point out that I have actually watched the sunset from Worthing Pier before. One of my last summer walks in 2021 was a Lancing circular where I headed up to the South Downs and then looped around back to the coast at Worthing, where I watched the sunset and then walked along about 2 miles back to Lancing along the beach in the dark. That station, by the way, has a Network Southeast sign on the signal box. I noticed that Littlehampton had one this morning too. That walk was essentially a follow-up to one I'd previously done that year, where rather similarly I'd headed up from Portslade to the South Downs and then looped around back to the coast at Shoreham-by-Sea. Now, I mentioned in my last video on New Year's Eve when I was on the platforms at Shadwell station that this year I'm going to try and visit some stations I've been to before, but where I don't have a photo of. And in fact, I have already made some progress on that front, as this morning on the way to Littlehampton, I made sure to get a photo of Portslade, Shoreham-by-Sea and West Worthing. I had changed there, by the way, when I first went to Littlehampton in 2019 because I wanted to stop at all of the stations along the way, but my train was going to skip the next few, so I had to change. And of course there's so many more along this south coast line, so there'll be plenty more walks coming in the future. See, I like to take my time with it. I could very easily come out here and get them all done in one day, but it's close enough to London and I hopefully have many years of these adventures to come, so why not just take as much time as possible to explore these places. Anyways, I'm gonna hang out here on Worthing Pier and watch the sunset, and then we'll walk over to the station to head home. Well, the accolade for the first new station of the year for me is Worthing. I was very surprised to see that it has a mosaic sign on the outside. That wasn't there last time I was here. You usually see them at London Overground stations. So thank you for coming along with me on my first walk in 2026. I'm sure there's going to be loads more throughout the year, including some coast walks, but I think we should wait till summer for them. All the birds are underneath the pier. You can just hear them. That is incredible. I've never seen anything like that.